Yeah, I'd say you can definitely put this film into that category of films that are horrific in nature simply due to audio design that is a little bit too good. And today we have The Zone of Interest. Technically, it is a 2023 release. When I look up the date online, it does say like December 1st of 2023, so it can make it to the awards circuit and for the Oscars and all that. This didn't hit my local art house cinema and like many cinemas until early January, I think, for the most part. So to me, it feels like a 2024 release. The trailer came out for this, like the first trailers, and they were just very vague. It's like implied horror and also complacency, basically. And you could tell it's gonna have to do with like Nazis and the Holocaust, and you're just like, oh, okay, so what approach are we taking now? We've seen many, I mean, we've seen the classics like Schindler's List, Boy in the Striped Pajamas. We've seen it from like an emotional, kind of in the camp perspective. We've seen it like directly by witnessing the atrocities done. But it's like, how are we tackling it now? And this film definitely tackles it in a very, very unique and dark way. Directed by a Jonathan Glazer, if I'm saying Glacier, or Glazer, perhaps. Now, this isn't his first film, but aside from short films that he's done, he hasn't done a movie in 10 years. He directed Under the Skin, which I promise you, I've owned it for years. I'm gonna watch it one of these days. Over 10 years later, and he puts this one out. It's reaping the nominations and hitting the award circuits and doing a very, very good job. When I say starring cast, it's really weird because we definitely don't have protagonists. I mean, maybe like one character in this film is technically a protagonist, but we have our main characters. In this case, a family that we're following through all this. I suppose it's worth noting that in the family, the two that we have the most focus on, we have the father, the husband, played by a Christian Friedel, who I do not recognize, but most notably, aside from this, you might know him from a 2015 movie called 13 Minutes. It's one of his more notable works, according to IMDb. But the one you would recognize is his wife, who's played by Sandra Hüller, who most recently I covered in her role, or like the starring role of Anatomy of a Fall, which I loved that movie, and that's also been nominated. I think she has an Oscar nomination as well. So where to start? How to approach this film? This is one of the more unique films I've seen recently in that not only was it not made like your conventional film, but it doesn't progress as your conventional film either. I mean, I could tell from the trailer this was going to be something kind of more on the unique side of the spectrum. For the film to start with what feels like several minutes, just nothing. It just starts with like a blank screen. The audio kind of is slowly coming up, and it kind of is unnerving. It's not really like a classical score or anything, but it's just unnerving audio that sets the tone for what you're about to kind of experience. I hesitate to call it slice of life, watching this family that's just going about their business day to day, but the whole thing is this family shares a wall with Auschwitz, like the Nazi concentration camp. Like literally other side of the wall is Auschwitz, where these atrocities that we all know and have happened are ongoing. And it's this family that's projecting this like white picket fence, like the ideological nuclear family unit, and they're just going about their day, just dinner parties, gardening, going for a swim in the local creek, just having normal conversations and all this, while all this stuff is happening off camera. I say it's happening off camera, but you can hear all of it. They're just complicit and living their lives, and you hear the horrors that are happening off screen. I'm a little bit late on reviewing this one because I didn't just see it yesterday. I saw this like a few weeks ago. I've heard some of the reviews coming out, and people had some notes here and there. I'll at least share my thoughts on this one, and we'll move forward from there. Just from a production standpoint, I'm a little bit biased because I did see some behind-the-scenes featurettes of how they got this thing filmed, because they just kind of put cameras in and around this house. I mean, the characters that are interacting and doing their own thing, I presume they still had dialogue and directions to follow.
There was no lighting, there was no film gear on the set, only like cameras. So they wired the whole house with the cameras. Some of them were hidden, some of them were visible, but no camera people were behind it.
We were all in a trailer over the wall, basically.
How it affects the acting, you definitely knew you were all alone with the history, with all the things that were present in that house that I cannot even explain.
Production standpoint, that was kind of cool. The actors were all great. I mean, it's all in German for the most part, so there's only so much I can kind of judge from my limited American headspace. Cinematography is simple but effective and useful. The cameras are almost always stationary. It's almost always a still camera with the things going on in the shot, and then next shot, next shot. The only exception being, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's 2 or 3 scenes where you have clearly it's like a dolly pan, which means a camera on a dolly of some type, and it's just kind of tracking you across the scene like this. And that's whenever they're basically walking past the Auschwitz wall, because most of the film is filmed and with Auschwitz and somewhere behind you, right? You're only looking at the house, the family, the pretty little pool, the kids playing in the yard, the pretty garden as they explore it, and then a couple times that you do see the wall, it's either off to the side in a shot, or if it's the main focus and they're walking past it, you track and follow them as they walk past it, which is just a noticeable thing I saw from a production standpoint. But I think what I loved most about this film, and again, it's the darkest part of the film, is the audio design. What's crazy about this, they're just having these mundane conversations about lunch and dinner and talking about work and family, and just in the background, off in the distance, ambiently, you just hear almost constant just pop, 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 just the pops of gunshots. And I doubt they're all just being fired in the air, just people just being executed left and right, and the screams and moaning and wails of the damned and the tortured, and just these people, whether it's someone shrieking for their life or somebody that's being detained or tortured or whatever, and then just more gunshots, and the even more chilling sound of a scream abruptly ending with a gunshot going off. That's all going on in the background. It was very creative and a great choice for them to do it like this, because so many films will directly show you the horrors, but this is just showing you kind of the people involved in all this, these German families. And in this case, this German family where the husband is literally the commander, the guy tasked with running that whole camp, and just kind of how they're oh, well, we know all this is going on, but this is all for our life. This is so we can have, the wife is I can have my nice coat that totally wasn't stolen from one of the Jewish people that were interned over there. I can have my nice lipstick. We can have our lovely garden parties. My husband has a promotion coming up. Our life is just splendid and grand, and just this life that we built for ourselves, and this house and all this. Screams are going on, gunshots going off. It's I think I'll have soup today. The horror of just how complicit people don't realize is the people that were involved, even though they weren't cracking the whip per se, you're still, I keep saying that word, but the culpability, they're culpable. The way they live in their lives with all that going on, just wild to me. And the story is not really the main focus of the film, what these families are going through, and the husband who's being reassigned to something else. And although they're not really the primary driving force of the film, there is a interesting theory to possibly be crafted, where there are a couple moments where you do wonder, based on the husband's or the commander, commandant, or what have you, although he projects a very oh yes, Nazis and gassing people and all this kind of stuff, and he definitely projects this image of it, but there's a few moments where you see a certain look in his eye, or is he at night, everyone's gone to bed, he's smoking and gazing off into the camp. It just kind of has this not happiness, but this almost this forlorn look. And especially towards the end, there's a couple moments where he pauses, and you truly wonder, are those moments where perhaps what little bit of humanity is left in him, does he regret his actions? Does he regret what he's involved in? Maybe he just got you get in so deep, what can you do out of fear for self-preservation and for your family? Not to at all excuse the actions and behavior, but you do wonder if perhaps there is some regret or some moments that here and there where he's what have I become? What is it that I'm even doing? It's almost all entirely natural lighting. That's always impressive. I love when directors like that, or Robert Eggers, you use that in their film, just something it just takes a certain lighting is my biggest weakness, like lighting and audio when it comes to two of the three key things about a film, lighting and audio. They're my biggest weaknesses, so I always respect directors that can nail that kind of stuff. And the usual messaging, which is important to note, is about like the Holocaust and its victims, and remind people like what happened and the magnitude of the devastation and the outcome and the genocide that was committed, and just the way that this film kind of reveals that. I'm pretty sure my favorite scene in this film involves the family playing with dad in a river, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it, but that's probably one of, if not like my favorite scene in the film. This film doesn't really do much wrong. What's hilarious is I did see a review pop up on Facebook of all places for the film, and of course it was a negative one, so I had to give it a view. And this guy was like, "Oh, this is the most boring movie, nothing happened, I get the point, the critics are gonna love this one, but it was so slow and pointless, and I saw it was the same guy who did Under the Skin, which makes so much sense." And just like the way that he was talking about it, he was like, "Oh man, like nothing happens, there's no action, no character, no narrative, no explosions." Like it was just, sure, I get it, I get how people could come at this film and see it that way. I'll admit, pacing, although I was surprisingly enthralled by this film, and I was on not the edge of my seat, but like this film is not a short movie, and yet by the time that we got to the final scene, I was like, "Oh wow, are we at the end already?" Like it flew by for me. I didn't view pacing as an issue, but like I said, slice of life, really it's a slice of Nazi life. But sure, compared to most films, it's kind of slow and a tad bit mundane, albeit the horrific things that are happening constantly off camera, not really gonna get your adrenaline pumping or have some big moments of like characters arguing or some marriage story levels of drama or something like that. But I mean, that's what I think that the point of the film is, and I think that what the film sets out to do, it accomplishes, and it works. It's a little bit slower, but it serves a purpose. Once again, I keep referring to Lisa Frankenstein in my more recent reviews, or The Sweet East, the last movie I reviewed. I mean, it goes somewhere. Our main character, I mean, the only thing that really changes is that the husband is going to be transferred somewhere else, so eventually he preps for that and meets with some like Nazi bigwigs, sure. And yeah, the family does have some conversations, and some family dynamics change, and the way the kids kind of become accustomed to all of this is disturbing, and it was just watching the family in this area that I guess you could call a zone of interest. Quality of a film, it's all there. It accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do, and the only thing I could say is that there's, maybe more narrative or character could have been added, but I don't think it really needs it per se. Pacing and narrative could use like minor tweaks to some extent. Personal level, although I really enjoyed the film and respect it and appreciate it for what it is, did I love it? No. I mean, I'd watch it again, sure, and I think it's very important, and I loved what it did. There's just better films out there, or similar films that tackle similar subject matter that I think do it better, or in a more, like narrative or engaging way. But as it stands, I think Zone of Interest is a very, very good film, near perfect. I'm grasping at straws to find anything wrong with it. All that being said, I'd still confidently give Zone of Interest a high 4 out of 5. I give it a high 4 out of 5. I almost said 4, but like really, in terms of, again, quality of a film, it doesn't really do a whole lot wrong. And just because I didn't love it doesn't mean I can't discount the fact that like it really didn't have any missteps. Like, definitely a big downer, but I mean, I think it's worth a watch, a poignant and dark experience. Even as the film credits rolled, the final, what do you even call it? Not really a song, almost like discordant notes and like a cappella to some extent at the end. It makes you feel a certain way, and not a good way, but it's important that it makes you feel this way. The emotion this film evokes from you is perfect what the film is trying to tell and show you. I think it's worth it in theaters. Not really a date night kind of film. Can't catch it in theaters. Stream it when it comes out. It's an important film to see and a very unique perspective. That's all I gotta say about Zone of Interest. I'm a little bit late, but thank you guys again so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I do. And goodbye, travelers.